Well, hello, good afternoon. And here's one more session of the Grandma's March. It's a pleasure that I have here today Heather Price. I know she is based in Australia. And for me, it's just a delight being here because she is another surprise that comes into my life. Like since I started this project, inspiring my grandmothers, Rosita and Pepa, and I always want to honor them when I start. I put the intention around connecting to the feminine wisdom and connected the world to the feminine wisdom and give a voice and a space for that, for the grandmothers, for the wisdom keepers, for that when feminine wisdom get out there into the world. And one woman connects me to the other and connects me to the other. And I just have to show up and be here. So some reason, I don't know, I don't remember why and how I get into you, Heather. And I know I sent you a message and yeah, you answered the call and we're here now talking, and I'm really curious about your amazing work because I know it's a sacred, amazing work with drums. That's the only thing I know is related to wisdom. And I also happen to know right now that you're a grandma, so that's like an honor for me. And I'm going to stop talking and I want you to share us your amazing story and anything you want to share about your personal story, life, memories that you have, even from your grandmothers or ancestors, and what inspired you to do the work that you do today and being the amazing woman you are. And of course, then you can tell us after about how it's to be a grandmother. But first, let's start with your story.
Well, thank you, Monica, for having me here. And I'd just like to honour your journey and also honour the ancestors around us and the grandmothers who hold us constantly in other worlds, and that they've brought us together somehow. Yes. They're very magical in those worlds, how they manage to do that. And so just gratitude for our connection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you're honouring the grandmothers in this world, is what I'm hearing, because having just passed through International Women's Day, and it's really ought to be International Women's Week these days because time is given to the celebration of women. And of course, there are women in real need at the moment. So I'm part of a community here that's very strong in taking care of sisters, sisterhood and looking after each other. And it's a community that I've been part of for probably about 16, 17 years, maybe even a little bit longer. I live in the mountains in the hinterlands and north of Brisbane in Australia. And I've just returned back to this state with COVID happening in Sydney, actually. I was living in Sydney for 6 years and I had to leave there in a hurry to cross the border. So in Australia, our borders have closed between states quite a few times. And I've had to jump in the car and take off twice to get across the border before I'm put in lockdown. And I've actually been put in lockdown on the other side once, but 3 times really altogether. Yeah, so it's been pretty hectic. Realize that separation, So then my work is about connecting people when they're in the fear of separation. And that could be the fear of separation from their home, fear of separation from their loved ones, from their ancestral, cultural sacredness. And that fear, that's a really big one because there's such a challenge in the world to maintain that sacredness and that tradition that our grandmothers have spoken and taught and guided all the way through, because that's what they do. They have the capacity, they have the time, they have the wisdom, and to hold on to that despite the fact that we have so many demands on us in this physical world is pretty amazing. So I'm not sure if I've answered any questions there, but that's just a little bit of reflection on what you've just said.
Forget about the question. This is just a chat between us about your story and what you do.
My story, I was born on the land, and I lived there for 38 years on and off. When I say on and off, I went to boarding school and then I went to college in Sydney, both those places in Sydney, both those things in Sydney. So I was away from home for 7 years of those sort of really important years of my life. And the biggest separation for me, speaking of separation, was separating from the land and separating, because I love sitting on country, you know, and separating from the animals. So that was a really big thing, to go to the city. And the minute I could, I returned back because I was missing that connection. And I think I miss my grandmothers too, because they were so much part of my life. I grew up with a grandmother in my home. She lived with us for 14 years, and until she had a stroke and she had to move out and go into care. Mm-hmm. And then I had another grandmother on the land as well, who I used to go and stay with, and she was amazing. So they both inspired me. However, the one that I used to go and stay with was one of those women who could turn her kitchen, a meal on for about 20 people in 5 minutes. You know, she had chutneys and pickles, and I can still remember she used to give us a boiled egg and a little egg cup. And when she passed, she asked me if I'd like anything. And I said, I'd love one of your little egg cups, which I kept. And she also gave me her flour sifter because she was always baking. So she was a member of the Country Women's Association. She was a judge, actually. And fantastic in the kitchen, beautiful mother of 7 children. Used to, you know, grow her own produce and harvest her own produce. Her husband was away building dams, my grandfather, and with draft horses, and she was just there for the family and for the community. She was a great community woman. And of course, I've inherited that. You know, I've inherited all those things pretty well. And I lived on the land, and I did all those things. And we grew our own produce. We raised our children. I was dedicated to the local community. And I had that on both sides of my family. My father was very much a community man as well. And so that sense of community was really important growing up. And I lived there out in the bush. When I got married, I moved to this really isolated property. And I had to connect with something sacred. I had 3 sons and a husband. And I felt like I was the only woman, you know, there.
Oh, yeah.
So I had to connect with something that would relate to me. And I found the land, found the earth, and I found the grandmother spirit in the earth was what I connected with, and the mother, you know, the sacred mother spirit. So I started to turn inward looking for company. And that led me to remember my time as a child of being able to talk to the horses in the trees, and they used to talk back to me. And of course, I continued to do it. And I had what you would probably call in those days a nervous breakdown, which was caused from stress. So there was a lot of stress with hardship, droughts, floods, financial crisis. We lost both our properties during a big crash here in Australia in 1996. Or 1994. It started happening probably in the late 1980s. But anyway, we eventually had to walk off the land, which was really sad. And during that time of having to make that decision, I lost my voice and I couldn't speak. So I went into nature to heal, which is what we do. And I sat with the trees. I remembered the trees were there for me as a child. And I used to go to the trees when I was a small child, and I'd had a very difficult childhood in many ways, had a lot of trauma. And I would talk to the trees and they would listen to me. And later I realized, you know, it's the grandmother spirit talking through the trees and talking through the wind. And they just kept me company. There's always really a very feminine energy in the spirit of those trees. So I returned to the trees, and this time it was a grandfather energy. Interesting. So we have our grandfathers out there too, watching us.
There's the balance of masculine and feminine, yes.
this day I went to a bloodwood tree, and I was sitting opposite on a stump, talking to the tree and saying, you know, in my head, I can't speak. I was stuttering and I couldn't put words together. And I need your help. And I went into this trance. And this was the beginning of my really reawakening. You know, I was very much awake as a child. And my reawakening started to happen in that moment, because what happened was I felt my whole body shrink. And I became the size of the ants at the base of the tree, and I could see them like I can see you. They were like, I was tiny, so they were huge. I'm holding a crystal, and I'll put it down. And they were absolutely like the same size as me. And I could feel the spirit of the tree entering my soul, and the most extraordinary feeling of shape-shifting until I became one with nature. And something in that experience healed my voice, and I was able to speak again. And but that was the turning point for me, when I realized that that's where I needed to go for my healing, you know. And I had already been journaling a lot. Louise Hay, you'd know Louise Hay. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's
yes.
great grandmother. Like, she was amazing. She woke a lot of people up. And so I did a lot of healing with her book. I met her later, and she signed my book. But I actually started to heal from the earth, and it taught me so much, because later on, as my journey continued, I had to move from the land, and I had to move from everything that was familiar and take my sons, have three sons, with me and start again. And we'd been in the same home for 10 years. We'd moved once, and then we moved back to that home. And there was this threat of losing myself. And my marriage was not able to sustain the stress of, you know, financial crisis, and my illness. My body used to take on things so much in those days. And I knew that I couldn't survive. I don't know if you can relate to that, but when trauma comes, people out there will know what I'm talking about. And you kind of think for a long time, I'm not happy, or I'm not content. But you put up with it. But there just came a point when I couldn't put up with it anymore. And it was like, I've compromised myself too much. I need to be who I am. So I was in the middle of creating this artwork, this installation. And the installation was reflecting the broken existence of a long lineage. So my children were 7th generation on the land here in Australia, which is pretty amazing. Like, it was really a long history of working the land and living on the land. And that broken existence, it was called the unbroken existence, and it had a slash over the UN. And it meant that there had been a long lineage of unbrokenness, and then suddenly it was broken. So I had to take that pain with me of breaking my grandmother's and my grandfather's traditions on the land, and to take my children away from where they could be nurtured. It was a very hard decision to make, but one I didn't have a choice. And, you know, that call. Yes. So I took them to the city, and one of them had been run over when he was driving on a farm accident, and he'd had head trauma, and he ended up with a brain tumor. But I didn't know that at the time, and I just knew I had to get into the city as well for help. So it was this big kind of, it was step by step. We stayed in the country town for a couple of years, and then we moved to the city. And during that time of separation, I was very good, because we spent the weekends back on the property while we were selling it. I was able to adjust, you know, to the town and then moving on to the city. And there was such joy in amongst that. It's the crazy thing when you take that risk and your whole world is falling down, and you know that change is necessary, and you're right in the middle of it. It takes such courage. I was a professional artist at that time, and that's what got me to the city. We kind of, my art was being recognized, and I was moving to the city to exhibit as well. And something has to sustain you. You know, you have to have something to turn to. For me, it was my art, but it was also my prayers and my connection to the sacredness that started to really become important every single day. So fortunately, my mother was able to guide me toward that more, and she practiced Reiki, so she'd been initiated into Reiki, and she said, Heather, you need to do this. You know, it's going to help you with everything you're going through. She's very wise. She just knew, and so I did, and I'd listened to her. And the next thing, Reiki opened me up, and I cried for a whole week. Like, I can remember just releasing this pain of lost love. It was actually around love that I'd lost, my first love. And I just cried and cried and cried for what the dream. And this is what happens to so many of my beautiful people who I walk with. You know, they have this incredible dream, and then life happens, and their soul remembers the reason they're here, or reminds them. It always knows, but reminds them, okay, so, you know, you're having a cruisy time, but guess what? We've got to throw a bit of this spice in to help you discover more about who you really are beneath, you know, the ease and the grace of walking in the world. So I began to understand that these challenges that were thrown at me were growing me up. And Reiki helped me understand that and to integrate that. So I was very grateful, and I had this tremendous call to be a practitioner and to take care of people. What I did with learning was I became a practitioner very quickly, and my son was at the peak of his trauma, so I was using that on him. And my third eye, or my third ear,
yes,
started to waken right up. And there was an enormous crisis in the household. It was just terrible. And I won't go into details, but it was so traumatic that it broke me. And I can remember going out and sitting on the mailbox out the front of the house. And I'd been toying with the idea of becoming a practitioner of Reiki. And I was sitting on the mailbox in the rain, crying my heart out. And I said, if you find a way to help me help my son, I promise you, I spoke to, you know, the great spirit that guides us, the God, the ancestors. I promise you I will walk this way and serve. And I don't recommend that to anybody. I did it, but gee whiz, it all just came at me. But within 24 hours, I had found the thing that I'd been searching for 8 years for my son that stopped his traumatic, he'd lose control, you know, of himself. And discovered that he was allergic to the preservatives in bread, which I'd never ever knew that there were preservatives in bread. I knew everything about everything in food, but for some reason had skipped that. It was like, I say to my clients, we get these veils that sort of blind us from what the easier path until we get to where we need to go, and then the veils are lifted, and then we're on another path. And it's like, this is what was happening for me. So the minute I committed to my soul, we want to take you this way, the veil was lifted. I saw what was affecting him, and within 24 hours, he wasn't eating bread, and he did not have another burst of, I don't like calling them anger tantrums, but, you know, they were labeled as that, but that's not what they were. It was just this chemical reaction that he was having to the preservatives. And his frontal lobe was really badly damaged, and he was unable to, from his accident, and he was unable to sort of put things together, and suddenly he could. And from that moment, we had the first peace we'd had in 8 years since his accident, and I was able to then follow through. So I went to my doctor who'd been guiding this process of helping my son, and I asked him if I could set up practice in his surgery, and he said yes. I can't believe he said yes, looking back, and I did. And so I began to practice from there, which was fantastic. And I've stayed in, he had a colleague, a woman who I eventually went to for myself. And now I've been in that practice for, I don't know how long, probably 15 years or something, a medical practice where, maybe longer, it's probably more like 20, where I practice my energy healing. And Yeah, so I became interested in counselling very early in the piece. So I studied counselling alongside. So I was thinking about it yesterday, or International Women's Day. I was working 3/4 part, like I was working 20 hours a week, studying 3 subjects, and that's almost full time, and raising 3 sons in a new city, in a city, all by myself in this home. And I couldn't, I did it. I don't know how I did it. I was up till midnight every night, marking their homework and helping them and doing stuff and then studying, and can remember having my office and just being concentrating on. I was also writing part-time for a magazine, and I had this amazing dreaming going on in my head, and this amazing journey happening within me, and I was journaling. And so in the middle of all of that, my guides woke up within me. I mean, I woke them up, and I woke up, they were always awake, and they started talking to me, and it was like, oh my goodness, what do I do with this? And so I started journaling. They were automatic writing to me. Then I started drawing, and they were drawing through my drawings, because I used to journal every day. And suddenly this huge world was happening within me, and my principal guide, Grey Eagle, started to teach me how to read an energy field beyond Reiki, and how to move beyond that, that I'd known. So that happened for 5 years, and I was taken on an initiation into the shamanic way, which this is one of the ways we can walk that path, is through that internal initiation. So each step of the way, I would go through something, and I'd be led through by my inner guidance, and then I would awaken to a new way. And so I began to they showed me, my beautiful guides showed me how to work with my clients and work in those other worlds, and taught me about the sacred circle map of consciousness. I'd never heard of the word shamanism, which is, the words come from Siberia in Northern Asia, from the Tungus tribe, and I'd never heard of any of that, but I just knew something incredible was happening. And I didn't know whether I was going mad, but I didn't have a choice, and it was, my beautiful clients went mad with me, and we discovered it together. And one of them asked me if I'd teach, and so in 2004 I had 6 people come to me. I began teaching what I discovered on the inside, and this is a long story. And I came through that time to discover something. This is really relevant to what you're doing. I worked in corporate a lot too with this work. I got to the point where the grandmothers started to speak to me. There were other voices that I heard along the way, but they really, really identified themselves through an Indigenous sister of mine close by. So she said, just ask the grandmothers. And that's sort of like a Native American term that I knew about, but I started to connect with the grandmothers in the trees, and connect with the grandmothers in the wind, and to listen more carefully to them. And I heard their voice again. And so one of my beautiful, she's a guide, but she's also an ancestor from 7 generations ago. She came in right into my body during a healing, and she said, let me do it, dear. Let me do it. It was like I could hear her saying, I can take care of this one for you. So I surrendered over, and she completely embodied me, and just my hands it was actually on myself, I remember now. And I was really struggling with pain, and I've had a lot of surgery, a lot of operations, because my body used to take on the stress. And she just worked over my entire, like my shoulders, my torso, and down, and she moved and she shifted, and I was just totally not there at all. It was her all through my body. And I thought, my goodness me, I came out of it and I felt fantastic. And so I started to work with my clients. My grandmother started to embody me. So yeah, I have this amazing grandmother healer, and I've taught this to my students as well. So I have these beautiful grandmother memories of, teaching me how to cook and teaching me how to nurture the land and the animals and all those beautiful grandmother things. And then I have these grandmothers who nurture me and help me heal
Guide you.
people. And then I'm a grandmother now. So I teach my 4 grandchildren as much as I can without interfering with their parents' cultural way. You know, I'm very careful because they'll raise them a certain way, and I don't want to be interfering with that. But at the same time, at every opportunity and very gently, I teach them really, you know, basic things like talking to trees and getting permission to take leaves, flowers. Yeah. So yesterday I was working with my little granddaughter, and there was a bit of this tree that was broken off and dead, and I said, we need to break that off. We can do that, but we just need to ask the tree first. And then the sap started coming out. I said, oh goodness, I think the tree's crying. And she said, don't be silly, Nanny, that's just sap. So, you know, they bring you back to earth. Anyway, I'll take a big deep breath and you can say something now. I've taken over. Thank you.
Oh, this is amazing. I just like feel like another granddaughter just listening to your stories, because I just love this. And how beautiful, and how beautiful is being able to be a grandmother and pass all that amazing wisdom. And I know there is a lot of grieving, pain, healing journey that you have gone through. But without all that, you weren't here doing your work that you're doing. And yeah, you're always being guided by the grandmothers since the beginning, your own grandmothers, and now the other guides that you have. And wow, it's like I want to stay here forever listening to more of all this. This is amazing. What a blessing. And what do you think is the role? And more, you just were saying, like, now I'm a grandmother. For those grandmothers out there, what maybe also the ones that are not, you know, biologically, they don't have children, but how can we play that role as human beings of being the grandmother to others and to children out there?
Look, it's something that I've really had to discern that role in terms of understand it in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, if you look, I read this the other day about grandmothers. So my grandmother, when my mother was in my grandmother's womb, everything that my mother would need to become a mother was created in my grandmother's womb. Do you know this?
Yes.
It's scientific. Yes. Yeah,
I read about that. Yes. It's like our eggs were also started forming there, right?
Oh my God, that just blew me away. It was like
I know.
in my maternal grandmother's womb as an egg. My goodness, can you believe that? So really, I think at one point I was so rebellious because I had this separation from my two of my grandchildren at one stage through some unfortunate circumstances, and I really felt this strong energetic attachment to when my first grandchild was born. It was incredible. It was exactly the same feeling I had when his father was born. You know, it was this tremendous love and this need to protect. And I took him to the window and introduced him to the world. And it was like, I'm here for you forever. And that's what I said to him. No matter what happens to you in your life, I'm here. It doesn't matter what you do, I'm here. And I made this promise to him. And it was this incredible feeling of just pure love for him. And I wasn't trying to take away from his mother, because of course she would have, you know, all those amazing feelings. And I was so lucky privileged to be able to hold him. I didn't have that opportunity with the other 3 because things were different. But this particular connection has remained very strong. And you do have this sense of, well, for me, not everybody will, of I'm here for you. no matter what. And in a different way, but it's a playful way, in a loving way. And just nothing really gets to you the same way, because when you're a mother, you know, the stresses that happen to you. Are you a mother?
No,
Are you?
I'm not. No, but yeah, my sister is a mother and I have two nephews and I can see that. Yes.
Yeah, and it's sort of like you miss a lot of opportunities because you're so busy in
Yes.
your, in your head. But you don't have that as a grandmother, as a rule. Sometimes you do, because we take on a lot more responsibility these days. A lot of grandmothers are taking on that parenting role, or co-parenting role. But yeah, there's something playful and just a bit of wisdom that you realize, my goodness, it's so important to spend time rather than all the time, rather than having everything tidy. But like you, I have this tremendous understanding of the need for aunties. And auntie's role is an uncle's role. Their role is much the same as a grandmother. And you know, you would have the same feeling, I'd imagine, because I've had that for my nieces and nephews. When I've held them, I've said the same thing. I'll be here for you, and I have been, you know. And it's just this incredible love, and you know that if anything happened, you could take that child, it could be your own, because we're connected in so many different ways, in so many at so many different levels. And so I did say to him, I don't know, I'm a bit, you've got to be so careful what you say, you know, and commit to, because one of my sisters wasn't able to have children circumstances, but she was so much part of the raising of my own children. You know, I said, I know you've missed out, but next time round I'll be the auntie. And she's like, God, there I've done it to myself again. I've invited some amazing story, but I've had such compassion and love for her. I just wanted to reassure her, you know, I know that this is difficult, but guess what? You are so important. And without you, I would never have been able to do what I've done. She's been incredible every step of the way, never missing a birthday, just backing up. And I have four sisters, and you know, they're there for my sons. Auntie is so important, and grandmother, and it's the mother, of course, we know that, but it doesn't even have to be a blood auntie. You can be an auntie. And our beautiful Indigenous Aboriginal peoples here know that and teach us that all the time. That when a child is born into the family, it's the community, it's the village, you know, everyone takes care of the child. And so I think if we could get our heads around that a bit more, our world would be a very different place. What do you think?
I think so too. And I love what you're saying about having the time and being playful, because yeah, I completely relate to that, being an auntie, because I feel like a grandmother, you know, like I don't have to worry about the responsibility. I don't have to worry about the stress or education, but I go above and beyond in just being playful, giving love, giving my time. I love to paint, so paint with them and do creative stuff and do different things that at least they remember something fun and different, you know? So yeah, I love that. And I can see some of that on you too as a grandmother, which I love, because yeah, I know you were, I want maybe show some pictures of or drawings of my grandsons or granddaughters. So I love that playful thing. And I love I love you to share with us, because that's like, for me, I keep every single one. Look at that.
It was my birthday. It was my birthday on Sunday, and I had all the family here, and my four grandchildren all came with their cards that they made themselves.
So beautiful.
And you know, I just wanted the energy of them around. But what you're saying is so important. And look, if anyone out there who's listening to this hasn't had children, I know that nobody can explain what that must feel like unless you go through it, you know. And if that's something that's really causing great heartbreak, then my love and compassion to you is, you know, huge. I just want to reassure you, all the aunties out there and the uncles, that we couldn't do it without you. You know, that we need you to do those things while we get on with that, cleaning the nappies and, you know, the kitchen and preparing the food. Like, we have to do all that stuff that needs to be done, but we need the wise, beautiful aunties and uncles around our children to grow them and to show them the world, that it's not all stress and doing and busyness, that it's, and that they have an extension beyond their models, their role models, because unfortunately not all, when I think about what my children were exposed to growing up, they didn't really have a lot of the aunties and uncles, and they had a grandmother very close by and a grandfather, but there was a lot of stress and trauma. And if it hadn't been for my sisters visiting, they wouldn't have had that, you know, that variation on life, that other than just me as their model as woman. So they've been a great influence on my sons. So I'm very grateful to the aunties and the uncles. They have beautiful uncles as well on my former husband's side. And, you know, where would we be without them? And the grandmothers and the grandfathers, we mustn't forget the grandfathers.
Yes, cannot forget about them.
Extraordinary influences. But we are here to celebrate International Women's Day.
Right.
And if I can just spend the next few minutes talking about the importance of that.
Yes.
So the fact that we're allowed to have a special celebration just around that, you'd be aware, and we're all aware, that the need for the feminine energies to really come in now to help us with everything that's going on across the planet. Our International Women's Day here was to acknowledge that we now have in Australia, we have hundreds of thousands of women, and the majority of them are actually over 50 now without a home in Australia, or they're threatened to not have a home. So they're facing homelessness is what the statistics that are coming out. I can't quote them because they haven't been proven yet. So I'm not going to quote them, but they're staggering. And locally we have, you know, over 1,000 here where I live. People who are homeless, a large majority of those are women with but mostly women over 50 who can't afford the rent here in Australia. We don't have enough care. It might not be happening everywhere else in the world. And a lot of women are living in their cars and tents and all sorts of things because the rents here, what happened with this pandemic was that people have left the cities. We've had 20,000 people move into here, into the coast in the last year. And because they've been locked down in other states and they've decided they won't go through that again. So they've just moved. They've offered, you know, thousands of dollars more rent, and they've just forced all the rents up, unfortunately. That's one of the reasons. There's other reasons, but people can't afford. Generally, people are having difficulty renting now because the rents have gone up here, and some of them have gone up $200 a week. You know, that's just outrageous, really. Anyway, we're now at that stage in our community where we have to acknowledge this and take care of it. And as a grandmother, I'm really at that point where I haven't got children at my feet. I see this and I know that something has to be done. So in 2016, I formed a leadership group in Sydney. I lived in Sydney for 6 years. That's why I went, even though I didn't know that was why I was going. And when I got there, I pulled together all these amazing leaders. There's over 40 of us in Sydney who gathered and we co-create together, but we're called vision keepers. So we go in and we sit and we yarn and we talk and we just listen to each other and nurture each other and guide each other. It's like a spiritual business sort of meeting, or meet up we called it. And then we have a retreat and we gather and we talk about worldly things, men and women. So I had the vision for it, and I called, there were 8 of us, seven of us in the first circle. We became the founders and we're co-creators. So I really hesitant to call myself the founder. I'm not, because they all had the vision too. I just brought them together.
Yeah.
And you know, they came to my home, the first meeting, and then I said, are you in this with me? We're in it together. And this is what happened on here locally. We had an International Women's Day gathering, and I called together, there were 9 of us this time. I've got this idea, will you jump in with me? And the idea came from one of the vision keepers in Sydney. I'm going to tie this together for you. she decided she would run, or she would hold an art installation called Hung Out to Dry, which means my community has turned its back on me, yeah, which is really sad. So she started it in the Byron Bay Shire. So we have this amazing place where a lot of the people have migrated to. And there are over 1,000 women homeless there that actually are homeless, and they've joined her online, and she's been helping them find accommodation. She's called all these people together. She's done the most incredible job, and they're going to be building houses, on land, and the councils coming in. So I was just so in awe of her and what she did. I said, you know what, we're going to do, we're going to hold it Hung Out to Dry here in Mullaney to support you. So I pulled that together with some beautiful sisters, and this is a dress hanging with a peg. And we created this enormous installation. And there was another one of our vision keepers in Sydney who did the same thing in Colo River. So the three of us had these installations happening, Hung Out to Dry, all called the same name, and lots of publicity to put the message out there that, okay, so what is happening in our community was the first question. What is being done about it? It's the second question. What can be done about it? And what can you do about it? What will I do about it? It comes back to us. And as a community, the grandmothers know this. We all have to work together. We can't just expect one person to carry a load. That one single leader, it's gone. The lone wolf, it's gone. We don't do it that way as women. We sit in circle. We might have a team of wise, sort of like, don't have to, I'm not going to call them elders, it's not the right name for it, but just wise vision keepers, visionaries. And one might be 10. Well, we have our visionaries coming in at such a young age, and we share the leadership. Has to be the way, in corporate, has to be the way, small business has to be the way, in communities. We can't put all that responsibility on one person's shoulders. It's too much for them. We burn them out, and they go grey overnight, and it's cruel. It's not good for them. It's got to get together and work together to find solutions and help each other co-create. This is what came out of it. We had this amazing installation and hung all these dresses up high. We've got fabulous photos.
Oh, it must look so beautiful. Is there a place that we can see those photos? And
yeah. Well, on the event page on Facebook, it's called Hung Out High, and you'll see several of them probably there now. But ours is in Mullaney, and also can I put my?
Yeah, sure. Please spread your work.
My website, I've got a community on the front page. You'll see my community work. In one of my little boxes there, and you go in there and then you can find it eventually. But I'm www.Shamanic Path and Practice. So Shamanic, you'll have to look up how to spell Path and Practice. There's no R in Shamanic. .com.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll take you there. It's a bit of a mouthful, but maybe you can put that somewhere.
Yes, I will post it when we post when we post everything on the recording. We will post the link for sure, because everybody has to see that amazing work and all the Hung Out to Dry, right? Everything that you're doing. That's
like our grandmother of the country Auntie Edna came and blessed the land, blessed the installation and welcomed us there, and another beautiful Indigenous sister came and did a dance with us, and we have a very strong community here of women, from our original women as well. And I had that happening in Sydney. It's just beautiful, and they teach us so much about how to take care of the planet and land and ourselves. Yeah.
Oh, this has been amazing. Okay, we have already been 54 minutes in a most delightful talk together with you, sharing the story, sharing your wisdom, all your experience, your healing process about your grandsons and granddaughter, and now your community work and what you do out there. And thank you, Heather, for sharing all that wisdom, really, because it really touches my heart. And the message that I really hear and see and receive from you is all that connection to nature, and how important is your guides and your ancestors, your land. Take care of that. Be playful, because you always bring that playful side in you, and I love that. And community, community is the answer, and yeah, that's what we need out there. I was telling you, corporate world, and a lot of the questions I do is how can we bring the old to create the new in the new systems and what this world needs. And if we get all together, take care of each other, bring love and do playfulness, you know, and joyful moments. Yeah, that's all what we need. Yeah. So I can thank you now.
Yeah. Remember the joy and make room for the joy. It's one of the principles that I teach. Yeah. So I could go on for another hour about that. Can you hear? I'm listening to the birds out in the bushland.
No.
I have a running creek out there, and I have a house, and they kept talking to you when you started talking about listening to nature. Magpies started calling out.
There they are, and I can see the background, beautiful nature there, and wow, the owls are there. So
yeah, they're just reminding anybody out there, you know, who's been called to this will be part of love nature, I'm sure, and it's where we all need to go. And sometimes people are stuck in apartments in the city, but you can go into those inner worlds. And so every Sunday afternoon, I do run it's different timing for you, but I do run a sacred drum workshop. So that's on Facebook, and it's just by donation. Most people aren't in the position to do that. I just say to them, if you want to, because the last time the donations went towards the installation, you know, I usually put them towards a cause. But yeah, it's beautiful. Come and I play my drum and I take people on a journey, so you can go into the world within and have that nature fix there in that inner world. That happens as well on my Facebook.
Yes, I would love to participate.
You know what? It's actually a year next Sunday, and I haven't missed a Sunday. Even on my birthday, I did it.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Oh, I want to be part of one of those for sure. I will be there.
You have to put your alarm clock on, but you're very welcome.
Yes, I love it, and for sure I'll follow your work. We will post everything because we have to spread it out there. And I want to just thank you from my heart this time, creating the space to be here, sharing all your story, your wisdom, and how lovely and amazing you are. Thank you for everything. And yeah, we will see each other soon for sure, because I want to hear much more from you.
I just want to say thank you to you for following your call and to every role that you play and everything that you do. And it is so important. And bless you for listening and for following. Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been a delight.
No, thank you. Same thing. Thank you.